Now let's begin. The December wind cut through Craig Farmer's jacket as he stepped out of the hospital's staff entrance 3 hours before his shift was supposed to end. He'd traded shifts with another pediatric psychologist so he could spend New Year's Eve with his son, Jeremy. At 8 years old, the kid deserved to have at least one parent present when the clock struck midnight. Craig had spent the last decade building his practice, specializing in childhood trauma and family dynamics. The irony wasn't lost on him that he could read other families like open books, but had somehow missed the warning signs in his own home. Or maybe he hadn't missed them. Maybe he'd just been too exhausted, too willing to keep the peace, too focused on being the provider, while Chelsea and her family slowly poisoned everything he'd built. He'd met Chelsea Mackey 12 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. She'd been beautiful, charming, the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile. Her family had old money, not billionaire money, but enough that they'd never worked a real job. Her mother Trudy ran a local charity foundation that seemed to exist primarily to give the Mackey family tax write-offs and photo opportunities. Chelsea's older brother Dennis managed the family's real estate holdings with the kind of casual incompetence that only generational wealth could sustain. Her younger sister Stacy divided her time between yoga retreats and online boutiques that hemorrhaged money. The marriage had been good at first, but after Jeremy was born, something shifted. Chelsea started spending more time at her family's estate, a sprawling property in the wealthy suburb of Millbrook Heights. Craig would come home from 12-hour shifts to find his son with a nanny while Chelsea attended another Mackey family dinner. When he objected, she'd accuse him of being controlling, of not understanding that family was important. The real change came 2 years ago when Trudy convinced Chelsea to join the foundation's board. Suddenly Craig wasn't just the working-class husband anymore. He was the embarrassment. The child psychologist who worked with damaged kids instead of building something profitable. At family gatherings, Dennis would make jokes about Craig's charity work while pouring another scotch. Stacy would ask Chelsea, loud enough for Craig to hear, when she was going to upgrade. Craig pulled into his driveway at 8:47 p.m. The house was dark except for the lights blazing in the great room. The formal living space Chelsea had insisted they build onto their modest colonial because Jeremy needs to learn to appreciate quality. Through the front window, he could see movement, hear laughter. That's when he saw his son. Jeremy stood in the front yard, barefoot in the snow, wearing only his thin pajamas. In his small hands, he held a piece of cardboard with words written in Chelsea's distinctive handwriting. "I don't deserve to celebrate." Craig's training kicked in before his rage could. He moved quickly, scooping Jeremy into his arms. The boy's feet were ice cold, his lips starting to turn blue. Craig could see tear tracks on his face, frozen against his cheeks. "Dad," Jeremy's voice was small, confused. "I thought you weren't coming home until late." "I traded shifts, buddy. I wanted to be here for New Year's." Craig carried him toward the front door, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. "How long have you been out here?" "Since 7. Mom said I ruined Christmas, so I don't get to celebrate anymore. She said I need to learn there are consequences." Jeremy's words came out matter of fact, like he was reciting a lesson he'd been taught to accept. Through the window, Craig could see them now. Chelsea, Trudy, Dennis, and Stacy, all dressed in formal attire, champagne flutes in hand. They were standing around the fireplace, laughing at something on Chelsea's phone. She was holding it up, showing the screen to her family. They were watching Jeremy. They were watching his son freeze outside and laughing about it. Chelsea was filming it. Craig's hands didn't shake as he opened the front door. His voice didn't rise. A decade of de-escalating crisis situations with traumatized families had taught him that the quietest voices often carried the most weight. The door swung open. The Mackey family turned, their laughter dying in their throats. Chelsea's face went from amusement to shock to something like fear in the span of a heartbeat. "Craig." She lowered her phone quickly. "What are you doing home? Your shift." "What did he do?" Craig's voice was calm. He stood in the doorway, Jeremy still in his arms, the boy's frozen feet visible to everyone in the room. "He threw a tantrum at Christmas dinner," Trudy said, her tone defensive but trying for authoritative. "Completely embarrassed Chelsea in front of the Vanderbilts. We're teaching him that actions have consequences. By putting him outside in 20-degree weather, barefoot. We were monitoring him through the window," Dennis said, gesturing with his scotch glass. "Don't be so dramatic." My father did the same thing to me, and I turned out fine. Craig looked at Dennis, the 42-year-old man who'd never held a real job, who drove drunk and called his lawyers, who'd been through 3 marriages because he couldn't stop sleeping with his staff. Did you? Stacy stepped forward. Craig, you're being hysterical. Chelsea is his mother. She has a right to discipline. I'm calling Child Protective Services. 5 words. Spoken in that same calm, professional tone Craig used in his practice. 5 words that made Chelsea's champagne flute slip from her fingers and shatter on the hardwood floor. 5 words that turned Trudy's face the color of old snow. 5 words that made Dennis actually set down his drink. You wouldn't dare, Chelsea whispered. I'm his mother. Craig looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who could watch their child suffer for entertainment. Someone who'd been so consumed by her family's toxicity that she'd become something cruel. Watch me. He turned and carried Jeremy upstairs to pack a bag. Behind him, Chelsea's voice rose in panic. Craig, wait. We can talk about this. Craig. He didn't look back. The pediatrician at Providence Hospital confirmed what Craig already knew. Early-stage frostbite on 3 toes, mild hypothermia, and significant psychological distress. Dr. Scott Levine had been Craig's friend since medical school, and his face had gone hard when Craig explained what happened. This is reportable, Scott said quietly, typing notes into his computer. Even if you weren't planning to report it, I'm mandated to. I know. I'm filing my own report in the morning. Scott looked up from his computer. Chelsea's family has a lot of pull in this town. The Mackey Foundation sponsors half the charity events around here. Are you prepared for what's coming? Craig thought about his son, shivering under heated blankets in the examination room. About the video on Chelsea's phone. About years of subtle and not-so-subtle cruelty he'd excused or ignored because he'd been too focused on keeping his family together. I've been preparing for this longer than I realized, Craig said. I just didn't want to see it. Jeremy was released 2 hours later with instructions for warming his feet and a prescription for anxiety medication that Craig had no intention of filling. Not yet. Not until they processed what happened through proper therapy with someone who wasn't his father. They didn't go home. Craig drove to a hotel on the other side of town, checked in under his own name, and let Jeremy pick which movie to watch on the TV while they waited for room service. The kid chose a superhero movie and fell asleep halfway through. His small body finally relaxed against Craig's side. Craig's phone started ringing at 11:47 p.m. Chelsea. He declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined. Again. Again. By midnight, he declined 17 calls. He turned off his phone and watched his son sleep while fireworks exploded somewhere outside, bringing in a new year that Craig suspected would change everything. He'd spent his entire career helping families heal from trauma. Now he'd need to use everything he'd learned to make sure the people who'd hurt his son faced consequences that mattered. Not just legally, though that would come. But the Mackey family's greatest fear wasn't jail or fines. It was exposure, public humiliation, the loss of their carefully curated reputation. Craig knew exactly where to strike. He just needed to be patient, methodical, smart. He'd learned from the best, after all. He'd learned from them. 3 days later, Craig sat across from Paul Cooper, the family law attorney his colleague had recommended. Cooper was in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. You documented everything? Cooper asked, reviewing the file Craig had brought. Photos of Jeremy outside. Screenshots of Chelsea's social media. She deleted the video, but I'd already saved it. The hospital records from Dr. Levine. My own clinical notes as a witness. Temperature data from that night showing it was 19 degrees. And this. Craig slid across a small thumb drive. I installed security cameras around the house 6 months ago. Chelsea didn't know. I told her they were for deterring package theft. Cooper raised an eyebrow. And they captured everything. This isn't the first incident, just the most severe. I have footage of Trudy telling Jeremy he's defective because he cried at his birthday party. Chelsea locking him in his room for 6 hours because he didn't finish his vegetables. Dennis teaching him that real men don't ask for help. When Jeremy fell and split his lip. Months of psychological abuse, all documented. Why didn't you report this earlier? Craig had asked himself the same question every night since New Year's Eve. Because I kept thinking I could fix it. That's what I do. I fix broken families. I thought if I could just find the right approach, the right words, I could make Chelsea see what she was becoming. I thought I could protect Jeremy without destroying his relationship with his mother. He looked down at his hands. I was wrong, and my son paid the price for my hesitation. Cooper was quiet for a moment. Craig, what you have here is enough for an emergency custody order. Possibly criminal charges for child endangerment. Chelsea could lose all parental rights. Good. But the Mackey family won't go quietly. They'll hire the best lawyers money can buy. They'll try to discredit you, claim you're an unfit parent, maybe even suggest you fabricated evidence. This will get ugly. Let it get ugly, Craig said. I'm done protecting them from the consequences of their actions. Cooper smiled, a thin, sharp smile that told Craig he'd chosen the right attorney. Then let's bury them. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Craig had a restraining order keeping Chelsea and her family away from Jeremy. His phone showed 63 missed calls from various Mackey family members. He hadn't answered a single one. Craig spent the next 4 days establishing a routine with Jeremy. The boy needed stability, predictability, safety, all the things his home had lacked. They rented a small apartment in a different school district, enrolled Jeremy in a new school where the Mackey name carried no weight, and started seeing Dr. Amanda Keith, a child therapist Craig trusted. What Craig didn't tell anyone, not even Cooper, was that he'd been planning his exit strategy for 8 months. Not consciously, perhaps, but his clinical mind had been documenting, categorizing, building a case file, without him fully acknowledging what he was doing. The security cameras weren't really for package theft. The detailed journal he kept of family interactions wasn't just professional habit. The separate bank account he'd opened, the copies of all important documents stored in a safe deposit box, the consultation with a family lawyer for a patient situation. It had all been preparation. He'd known, on some level, that this moment would come. He just hadn't expected it to be so brutal. On the 4th day, his brother called. Craig had been expecting this. You need to answer Chelsea's calls, Tom Stark said without preamble. Tom was a defense attorney in Chicago, 5 years older than Craig, with the kind of ruthless pragmatism that made him excellent at his job. She's been calling me every 6 hours, crying about how you kidnapped Jeremy. I have temporary emergency custody. That's not kidnapping. I know that. I told her that. She's not listening. Neither is her family. Tom paused. Craig, I did some research on the Mackeys. They're well connected, but not as much as they think they are. Old money that's been slowly evaporating for 2 generations. The foundation is their reputation. Take that away, and they're just another family of assholes with a decent real estate portfolio. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you're playing chess while they're still playing checkers. They think this is about custody. They think if they throw enough money at lawyers, threaten you enough, maybe offer you a settlement, you'll cave. They don't understand you're not trying to win custody. You're trying to destroy them. Craig felt something cold settle in his chest. What makes you think that? Because I know you. You don't do anything halfway. And you've been documenting their abuse for months, which means you've been thinking about this for months. So what's the real endgame here, little brother? Craig watched Jeremy through the bedroom door. The boy was drawing with the art supplies Craig had bought, finally relaxed enough to create something just for himself. Jeremy deserves better than survival. He deserves justice. And the Mackey family deserves to understand what happens when you hurt children. Tom was quiet for a long moment. How illegal are we talking? Nothing illegal. Just thorough. Strategic. Public. I'm listening. Craig pulled out a folder he'd been compiling. The Mackey Foundation files taxes as a 501c3. Public records. I've been analyzing their financial disclosures for the last 6 months. They're funneling money through fake vendors, paying family members exorbitant consulting fees, and claiming charitable donations they never made. It's not embezzlement, it's fraud. Tax fraud. The kind the IRS loves to prosecute because it's high profile and easy to prove. You have evidence? I have Trudy's personal laptop. She used it for foundation business and left it at my house 3 months ago. I made a full backup before returning it. Emails, spreadsheets, invoices, everything. Tom whistled low. That's borderline illegal seizure of evidence. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I'm a concerned citizen who happened to back up a laptop before returning it to its owner. If that backup happens to show criminal activity, I'm obligated to report it. You sneaky bastard. What else? Dennis has been driving drunk for years. I have security footage from my cameras showing him arriving at my house intoxicated at least 12 times. Dates, times, license plate numbers. I also have screenshots of text messages where he jokes about bribing cops. I can't prove the bribery, but I can prove the pattern of drunk driving and the police's failure to arrest him. That's a corruption angle. The media would love that. Stacy's boutiques are money laundering operations. I can't prove what they're laundering money for, but the financial irregularities are obvious. A $10,000 dress sale to a customer who doesn't exist, shipping to an abandoned address. That's not a business. That's a front. Tom laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. And Chelsea? Chelsea documented her own child abuse and distributed it to her family. That video exists in multiple places. Once I submit it as evidence in the custody hearing, it becomes part of the public record. Any journalist can request it. Any advocacy group can use it as an example of wealthy privilege enabling abuse. You're not just taking custody, Tom said slowly. You're taking everything. They took my son's childhood, his sense of safety, his ability to trust the people who should protect him. Craig's voice was still calm, still measured, but there was steel underneath. I'm taking their reputation, their social standing, their freedom, if the law works the way it should. And I'm making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they are. When the custody hearing is in 3 days, that's when I submit the video evidence. But I've already sent anonymous tips to the IRS about the foundation, along with concerned citizen documentation. I've contacted a journalist at the Tribune who specializes in wealthy corruption. She's been investigating the Mackey Foundation for years, but never had enough evidence. I gave her enough. Jesus, Craig. I've also reached out to child advocacy groups, shared Jeremy's story, anonymously, with his identity protected. But they're preparing statements about how wealth and privilege protect abusers. When the video becomes public, they'll have a face to put to those statements. Tom was silent for a long moment. You know there's no coming back from this, right? Chelsea will never forgive you. Her family will spend years trying to destroy you. I'm counting on it, Craig said. Because every move they make will just prove my point. Every threat, every attempt at intimidation, every lawyer they throw at me, it all becomes evidence of exactly who they are. What do you need from me? I need you to be my brother. To be there for Jeremy if things go wrong. And to make sure that if the Mackeys do come after me, someone is watching, documenting, ready to use it against them. Done. I'll be there for the hearing. And Craig. Tom's voice softened. Dad would be proud of you. Mom too. Their parents had died in a car accident when Craig was in college, Tom already in law school. They'd been social workers, both of them, dedicated to protecting kids who couldn't protect themselves. Craig had followed their path into child psychology. Tom had taken a different route, but the same core mission. I hope so, Craig said. Because what I'm about to do is going to get messy. The Mackey family's first mistake was hiring Theodore Whitehead as their attorney. Whitehead was expensive, well-connected, and specialized in making problems disappear for wealthy clients. He was also, in Craig's professional opinion, a bully who relied on intimidation rather than actual legal strategy. Whitehead called Cooper's office the day before the custody hearing, demanding a meeting. They met at a neutral location, a conference room at a downtown hotel. Whitehead arrived with Chelsea, Trudy, and Dennis. Craig came with Cooper and Tom, who'd flown in from Chicago that morning. Let's be reasonable about this, Whitehead began, his voice smooth and patronizing. Dr. Farmer, we understand you're upset about a parenting disagreement. But removing a child from his mother over a simple disciplinary incident is excessive. Excessive, Craig repeated flatly. Chelsea made an error in judgment. She's acknowledged that. The family is prepared to make certain accommodations. Joint custody, perhaps, with generous parenting time for you. And a financial settlement to cover any therapy Jeremy might need. You're trying to buy my silence. Trudy leaned forward. We're trying to protect Jeremy from unnecessary trauma. Dragging this through the courts, making it public, that's what will damage him, not one isolated incident. Craig looked at his mother-in-law. In another life, before he'd seen who she really was, he might have believed her concern was genuine. One isolated incident. Is that what we're calling it? Craig, please, Chelsea spoke for the first time. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. I made a mistake. I see that now. But Jeremy needs his mother. You can't just take him away from me. You put him outside in freezing weather. Barefoot. For over an hour. You filmed it for entertainment. I wasn't thinking clearly. The stress of the holidays, family pressure. She looked at her mother, and Craig saw it. The same pattern he'd seen in his patients 100 times. Chelsea had been raised by Trudy the same way she was raising Jeremy. The cycle of abuse, dressed up in expensive clothes and justified by high standards. For a moment, he almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then he remembered Jeremy's frozen feet. The fear in his son's eyes. The casual cruelty of that cardboard sign. "No," Craig said simply. Whitehead's expression hardened. "Dr. Farmer, you should understand that the Mackey family has considerable resources. If you insist on pursuing this custody battle, they will use every legal avenue available to prove you're an unfit parent. Your work with troubled children, the long hours, your own family history." "My family history." Craig's voice stayed level, but Tom tensed beside him. "Your parents died in a car accident when you were 19. Surely that kind of trauma affects your ability to make sound parenting decisions. And your brother," Whitehead glanced at Tom, "is a defense attorney who represents criminals. The company you keep speaks to your judgment." Tom started to stand, but Craig put a hand on his arm. "Are you threatening me? I'm making you aware of how a custody evaluation might proceed. These things can get very ugly, very public. Is that what you want for Jeremy?" Craig pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Inside were copies of the video stills, Jeremy in the snow, the timestamp, Chelsea's phone visible in the window. "Actually, yes. I want this to be very public. Because I want everyone to see exactly what the Mackey family considers acceptable parenting." He slid the folder across the table. Chelsea's face went white. Trudy grabbed the folder and shoved it back. "You can't release that. It's a private family matter. It's evidence in a child endangerment case. Once it's submitted to the court, it's public record. But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why you're here. You're not trying to buy my silence. You're trying to buy my cooperation in keeping your crimes quiet." Dennis finally spoke, his voice ugly. "You blue-collar piece of shit. You married into our family. You're nothing without Chelsea. Nothing. We made you." Craig smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Actually, Dennis, you broke me. For years, you and your family made me feel like I wasn't enough. Not rich enough, not sophisticated enough, not Mackey enough. And I internalized that. I let you treat my son the way you treated me, because I thought maintaining family peace was more important than protecting him." He stood up. "But you didn't break me enough. I'm still a child psychologist. I still have credentials, a professional reputation, and most importantly, evidence. You made me feel powerless, but you forgot that powerless people become very dangerous when they finally understand their own strength." Cooper gathered his files. "We'll see you in court tomorrow. And Mr. Whitehead, you might want to advise your clients to prepare for very thorough questioning about their parenting practices. All of their practices." As Craig walked out, he heard Chelsea crying. Heard Trudy's sharp voice, Dennis's cursing, Whitehead's attempt to calm them. He felt nothing. Jeremy was waiting at the apartment with a babysitter, a college student named Margie Pike, who Craig had vetted thoroughly. When Craig walked in, Jeremy looked up from his homework. "How did it go?" "Exactly as I expected," Craig said. "They tried to scare me. Didn't work." Jeremy nodded slowly. "Mom called the babysitter's phone. She wanted to talk to me." Craig's stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I didn't talk to her. Margie said she needed your permission first." Jeremy looked at his hands. "Is it wrong that I didn't want to talk to her?" Craig sat down next to his son. "No, buddy. It's not wrong. You get to decide who you talk to. You're allowed to protect yourself. But she's my mom. Being someone's mother is about more than biology. It's about keeping them safe, making them feel loved. And when someone doesn't do that, even if they're your parent, you're allowed to need distance from them." Jeremy was quiet for a long time. Then, "Are you going to win tomorrow?" Craig thought about all the evidence he'd compiled. The video, the testimony, the pattern of abuse he could demonstrate. The legal strategy Cooper had prepared. The media coverage that was about to explode. "Yes," he said. "I'm going to win." The custody hearing started at 9 a.m. The courtroom was small, designed for family court proceedings, with Judge Laura Wells presiding. Wells was in her 60s, known for being fair but tough on parents who failed their children. Chelsea arrived with her entire family and Whitehead. She was dressed conservatively, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal, playing the part of the concerned mother. Craig saw through it immediately, but he wondered if the judge would. Then Cooper began presenting evidence. The video played on a screen set up in the courtroom. Jeremy, 8 years old, standing barefoot in the snow. The timestamp showed 7:03 p.m., Temperature displayed in the corner, 19 degrees. The video ran for 90 seconds. Chelsea had filmed that long before her family's laughter had made her stop recording. Judge Wells watched without expression. Then she watched it again. "Mrs. Farmer," Wells said quietly, "can you explain what we just saw?" Chelsea's voice shook. "It was a disciplinary measure. Jeremy had misbehaved at Christmas, and I thought showing him consequences would help him learn. You thought putting an 8-year-old outside in freezing weather, barefoot, for over an hour was appropriate discipline. I was watching him through the window. If he'd looked too cold, I would have brought him inside. He has frostbite," Wells said. According to the medical records submitted, he was 15 minutes away from serious tissue damage. You were filming him while he developed frostbite. Trudy tried to intervene. "Your Honor, if I may, our family has high standards. Sometimes children need firm guidance." "Mrs. Mackey, I'm not addressing you. I'm addressing Mrs. Farmer." Wells looked at Chelsea. "Did anyone in your family object to this punishment?" Chelsea glanced at her mother, and Craig saw it again. The fear, the need for approval. "No, Your Honor." "Did your husband know this was happening?" "No. He was at work." "What hospital does Dr. Farmer work at?" "Providence Hospital, where your son was treated for frostbite and hypothermia 2 hours after this video was taken." Chelsea's silence was answer enough. Cooper stood. "Your Honor, if I may, we have additional evidence of a pattern of psychological abuse." He began presenting the security footage. Trudy telling Jeremy he was defective. Chelsea locking him in his room. Dennis's cruel lessons in toughness. With each video, Judge Wells's expression grew harder. "Your Honor," Whitehead interjected desperately. "Dr. Farmer installed those cameras without his wife's knowledge. The evidence is questionable. The evidence shows child abuse." Wells cut him off. "I don't care if it was captured on a security camera, a phone, or a crystal ball. What I see is systematic mistreatment of a minor child by his mother and maternal family." She looked at Craig for the first time. "Dr. Farmer, you're a child psychologist?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Specializing in family trauma?" "Yes." "Did you recognize this abuse while it was occurring?" Craig had prepared for this question. "Yes, Your Honor. And that's my failure as a father. I documented it, thinking I could find a way to intervene therapeutically. I thought I could fix my family from the inside. I was wrong, and my son suffered because of my hesitation." Wells nodded slowly. "At least you're honest about it. Mrs. Farmer, do you have anything to say?" Chelsea stood, tears running down her face. "I love my son. I know I made mistakes, but I love him. Please don't take him away from me. Love requires action, Mrs. Farmer. Specifically, actions that protect and nurture. I see no evidence of that in these videos." Wells shuffled papers. "I'm granting Dr. Farmer full physical and legal custody of Jeremy Farmer. Mrs. Farmer, you will have supervised visitation only, pending a full psychological evaluation and completion of a parenting course. Visits will be supervised by a court-appointed monitor, not family members." Chelsea collapsed into her seat, sobbing. Trudy stood, face red. "This is outrageous. You can't. Mrs. Mackey, sit down, or I will have you removed from my courtroom." Wells's voice cracked like a whip. "And I suggest you and your family examine your own behavior very carefully, because I'm also ordering a CPS investigation into your treatment of your grandson. If they find evidence of abuse that rises to criminal levels, I will recommend charges." The courtroom erupted. Dennis was shouting. Whitehead was trying to calm everyone down. Chelsea was sobbing, and Trudy looked like she might physically attack the judge. Craig felt Tom's hand on his shoulder, felt Cooper's satisfied smile, felt the weight of 8 months of planning finally paying off. But he felt something else too. A cold, hard satisfaction that terrified him a little. Because this wasn't just about protecting Jeremy anymore. This was about making them pay. And he'd only just begun. The video hit the media 3 hours after the hearing concluded. Craig didn't leak it himself. The court records were public, and the Tribune journalist he'd contacted, Diana Cummings, had been waiting for exactly this. Her article ran online at 6 p.m. Mackey Foundation family under investigation. Child abuse video shocks community. By 8 p.m., it had gone viral. By 10 p.m., the Mackey Foundation's board had called an emergency meeting. By midnight, Trudy Mackey had stepped down as president, and 3 board members had resigned. Craig watched it all unfold from his apartment, while Jeremy slept in the bedroom. His phone buzzed constantly. Friends, colleagues, former patients expressing support. The Mackey family's phones, he imagined, were buzzing too. But not with support. Tom called at 12:30 a.m. Have you seen Twitter? No. Hashtag Mackey abuse is trending. People are digging up everything. The foundation's financial irregularities. Dennis's DUIs that mysteriously disappeared. Stacy's boutiques that don't actually sell anything. They're being absolutely destroyed. Good. Craig, I mean really destroyed. There are calls for criminal investigations. The IRS released a statement saying they're reviewing information provided by concerned citizens. That was you, wasn't it? I provided information. What they do with it is their choice. Tom laughed. You're scary when you want to be, you know that? I learned from watching people hurt kids for a decade. I learned what works, what doesn't, and what makes abusers panic. Craig watched the news coverage on his laptop. They're used to money protecting them. They're not used to public accountability. What's the next move? I wait. I let the systems I've set in motion do their work. I take care of my son, and I document everything they do in response, because desperate people make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, Craig's smile was thin. Then I make sure everyone sees them. He hung up and checked on Jeremy one more time. The boy was sleeping peacefully, something he hadn't done in months. Craig had won custody, but the war was far from over. The Mackey family would come back swinging. They'd try to discredit him, destroy him, take everything from him. He was counting on it, because every move they made would just prove his point. And Craig Farmer was very, very patient. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Craig returned to work part-time, arranged for Jeremy to start therapy with Dr. Keith 3 times a week, and established a routine that made his son feel safe. Meanwhile, the Mackey family imploded spectacularly. The IRS investigation became official on day 3. Federal agents showed up at the Mackey Foundation offices with a warrant. They seized computers, files, and bank records. Trudy was photographed being escorted from the building, her face a mask of fury. On day 5, Dennis was finally arrested for DUI, his 14th, according to the police records that mysteriously became public. This time, there was no making it disappear. His mugshot was everywhere. On day 7, Stacy's boutiques were raided by the FBI. Money laundering charges were pending. And Chelsea called Craig on day 9. You destroyed my family, she said without preamble. Her voice was empty, hollow. No, Craig said calmly. I exposed what your family already was. There's a difference. Jeremy is my son. I have rights. You had rights. You forfeited them when you tortured him for entertainment. It wasn't torture. It was discipline. Chelsea, do you remember what you said to me on our wedding day? Craig had been thinking about this moment for weeks. You said your family taught you that love means holding people to high standards. That pushing people to be better was the greatest gift you could give. I meant that. I know you did. And that's the tragedy. You genuinely believe that cruelty is love, that abuse is discipline, that breaking someone down builds them up. You learned it from Trudy, and she learned it from her parents, and it goes back generations. A family tradition of trauma dressed up as excellence. Chelsea was crying now. I didn't mean to hurt him. That's the thing about abuse, Chelsea. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. And the impact of your actions is that our son was afraid of his own mother. That he believed he didn't deserve to celebrate New Year's Eve. That he internalized your family's toxicity so deeply he thought he was defective. I can change. I can get help. Maybe you can. I hope you do. But that's not Jeremy's responsibility anymore. He's not your emotional support child. He's not your project. He's a kid who deserves to feel safe. I hate you, Chelsea whispered. I know. That's okay. You're allowed to hate me. But you're not allowed anywhere near our son until you prove you've actually changed, not just promised to. He hung up. Craig felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not anger. Just a cold, clear certainty that he'd done the right thing. 3 days later, formal criminal charges were filed against the Mackey Foundation for tax fraud. Trudy was indicted. The foundation was dissolved, its assets frozen pending investigation. 2 days after that, Dennis was sentenced to 6 months in county jail for his DUI, and the judge added a blistering statement about wealthy defendants who believe themselves above the law. 1 day later, Stacy cut a deal with federal prosecutors. She'd testify against the people who'd been using her boutiques for money laundering in exchange for reduced charges. The Mackey family, in the span of 3 weeks, went from local aristocracy to public cautionary tale. And Craig watched it all with the same clinical detachment he brought to his most difficult cases. Then came the phone call from Paul Cooper that changed everything. "Chelsea's pregnant," Cooper said without preamble. Craig felt his stomach drop. "What?" "She just filed an emergency motion for increased visitation. Claims she's expecting and wants Jeremy to bond with his future sibling. Says keeping them apart is cruel." "She's lying. She's trying to manipulate the system." "Maybe. But if she's not lying, this complicates things. The court might view it as a reason to allow more contact, family connections, sibling relationships, all that." Craig closed his eyes. Of course Chelsea would try this. When everything else failed, weaponize another child. When's the hearing? 2 weeks. Find out if she's actually pregnant. Medical records, something verifiable. Because if she is... Craig trailed off. If she is, then we need to start building a case for why that child shouldn't be left alone with her either. Cooper was silent for a moment. "Craig, that's a much harder battle. Removing a child who hasn't been born, yet based on abuse of a previous child. Courts are reluctant. Then we make them unreluctant. We show the pattern. We show the family history. We show that this isn't about one incident. It's about who Chelsea is fundamentally as a parent. That could take months, maybe years. I'm aware. But I'm not letting another kid suffer what Jeremy suffered. Not if I can prevent it." After Cooper hung up, Craig sat in the darkness of his apartment and wondered if he was doing the right thing. If this was still about protection, or if he'd crossed some line into vengeance. Then he remembered Jeremy's frozen feet. The fear in his eyes. The casual cruelty of that sign. No, this wasn't vengeance. This was prevention. The investigation into Chelsea's pregnancy took 4 days. She was indeed pregnant, 12 weeks. And according to the medical records Cooper's investigator obtained, legally, through a subpoena, she'd known about it before New Year's Eve. She'd known she was pregnant when she put Jeremy outside in the snow. Craig felt something crack inside him. Not rage. Not horror. Something colder. More calculating. "She's going to claim this proves she's changed," Cooper said during their strategy session. "That the pregnancy made her reevaluate her priorities, that she wants to be a better mother to both children. Except she knew she was pregnant when she abused Jeremy," Craig said. "Which proves pregnancy doesn't change anything." "Exactly. But we need to be careful how we present this. The court is sympathetic to pregnant women. We can't seem like we're attacking her for being pregnant. We have to show that pregnancy doesn't negate her pattern of abuse." Tom, who'd stayed in town for the duration, leaned forward. "What if we shift the argument? Stop defending what Craig did and start questioning what Chelsea's going to do. Make the court focus on the future child's safety, not just Jeremy's past abuse." "How?" Cooper asked. "Preventive intervention. Show that based on her documented behavior, her family's history, and the pattern of multi-generational abuse, there's a substantial likelihood this new child will suffer the same treatment. Request court-ordered therapy, supervised contact even after birth, mandatory parenting classes. Essentially create a framework that protects the child before abuse occurs." Craig looked at his brother. "That's basically assuming she's guilty before she's done anything to this child." "No," Tom said. "It's recognizing that past behavior predicts future behavior. It's what the criminal justice system does with repeat offenders. It's what protective services does with parents who've lost custody before. We're just applying it preemptively." "The court might not go for it," Cooper warned. "Judges are reluctant to restrict parental rights based on hypotheticals." "Then we make it not a hypothetical," Craig said slowly. An idea was forming. "What if we document her behavior during the pregnancy? If she's still engaging in the same patterns, the cruelty, the manipulation, the need for control, then it's not hypothetical. It's ongoing. How do you document that without violating the restraining order?" Craig smiled. "I don't document it. She documents it herself." Chelsea had always been active on social media. It was how she maintained her social status, connected with other wealthy mothers, and cultivated her image of perfection. Craig set up monitoring software, completely legal, as he was checking publicly available posts. And he waited. He didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the pregnancy became public, Chelsea posted, "So blessed to be expecting. This little miracle has already taught me so much about love and patience. Can't wait to give them the perfect life they deserve. 2 hearts, #baby number 2, #blessed mommy, #second chances." The post had hundreds of likes. Supportive comments. Friends congratulating her. But Craig saw something else in that post. Perfect life they deserve. The same language she'd used about Jeremy when he was born. The same impossible standards. The same setup for failure. He kept monitoring. A week later, nursery planning. Only the best for my little one. Designer crib, organic everything, custom wall murals. My baby will have everything they need to thrive. Hashtag nursery goals, hashtag perfect parenting, hashtag organic baby. Then, pregnancy cravings are real. But I'm being so good, only healthy foods. My baby deserves the best start, so I'm being disciplined. No junk food, no exceptions. Hashtag healthy pregnancy, hashtag discipline, hashtag best start. Each post revealed the same pattern. Perfection, control, impossible standards. The language of love wrapped around the reality of pressure. And then, 2 weeks before the hearing, she posted something that made Craig's blood run cold. Had coffee with a friend whose toddler was having a tantrum. She just gave in and gave him candy. I told her that's how you raise entitled children. Discipline starts early. My children will learn that actions have consequences from day one. Hashtag no excuses, hashtag raising strong kids, hashtag consequences. Craig screenshot the post, sent it to Cooper, and added, "This is what she thinks good parenting looks like. Consequences from day one." That's what she called putting Jeremy in the snow, consequences. Cooper called immediately. This is gold. She's literally documenting that she hasn't changed at all. The language is identical to what she said in her deposition. Can we use it in court? Absolutely. It's public, voluntary statements about her parenting philosophy. Shows a complete lack of insight into her abuse. The hearing came faster than Craig expected. Judge Wells had consolidated the visitation request with a 6-month custody review, meaning everything was on the table. Whitehead had been replaced with a new attorney, Josie Atwood, who was younger, smarter, and more dangerous. She opened by painting Chelsea as a reformed mother, humbled by the loss of her son and committed to change. Your Honor, Mrs. Farmer has completed 8 weeks of intensive therapy. She's taking parenting classes. She's severed contact with the family members who enabled her previous poor judgment. She's doing everything the court could ask of her. And she's pregnant, Judge Wells noted. Yes, Your Honor. Which is why supervised visitation with Jeremy is so important. He needs to understand he's not being replaced. He needs to bond with his future sibling. Keeping them apart serves no purpose except to punish Mrs. Farmer. Cooper stood. Your Honor, we don't dispute that Mrs. Farmer has attended therapy and parenting classes. What we dispute is whether she's actually changed. Attendance isn't transformation. He presented Chelsea's social media posts, highlighted the language, showed the patterns. She's still using the same vocabulary, still focused on perfection, discipline, and consequences, still blaming children for not meeting impossible standards. The only difference is now she's directing it at an unborn child instead of Jeremy. Atwood objected. Those are innocuous posts about pregnancy and parenting. You're reading malice into normal maternal planning. Normal. Cooper pulled up the post about consequences from day one. This was posted 3 weeks ago, Your Honor. My children will learn that actions have consequences from day one. That's the same logic she used to justify putting Jeremy outside in freezing weather. She's literally announcing that she plans to parent this child the same way she parented Jeremy. Judge Wells read the post carefully. Mrs. Atwood, has your client undergone a psychological evaluation as ordered? Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Wilson Dunham evaluated her and found no evidence of pathological parenting attitudes. Cooper interjected, Dr. Dunham is a general psychologist, Your Honor. We'd like to request an evaluation by a specialist in parental abuse patterns. Specifically, someone trained to identify multi-generational trauma responses. Mrs. Farmer has already been evaluated, Atwood began. By someone who bills himself as an expert witness for custody cases, Cooper cut in. His evaluations are notoriously favorable to whoever pays him. We're requesting an independent evaluation by Dr. Joseph West, who specializes in breaking cycles of familial abuse. Wells considered this. I'll allow it. Mrs. Farmer will undergo a second evaluation with Drive West within 30 days. Until then, supervised visitation will continue at the current frequency, 2 hours per week, monitored by a professional. Atwood stood. Your Honor, with respect, Mrs. Farmer is pregnant. The stress of these continued restrictions. The stress of being held accountable for child abuse. Wells's voice was ice. I'm not concerned about Mrs. Farmer's stress levels. I'm concerned about whether she's safe to be around children. The evaluation will determine that. Chelsea began crying. Craig felt nothing. Dr. Joseph West's evaluation took 3 weeks. He interviewed Chelsea for 10 hours over 5 sessions. Reviewed all the evidence. Analyzed the social media posts. Spoke with Jeremy. Spoke with Craig. Spoke with Trudy, who attended remotely from jail, where she was being held pending trial. His report was devastating. Mrs. Farmer demonstrates a profound lack of insight into her abusive behavior, West wrote. She intellectually understands that putting her son outside in freezing weather was wrong, but she emotionally still believes it was justified. She repeatedly returns to the framework of consequences and discipline, without recognizing that what she's describing is punishment, not teaching. More concerning is the evidence of multi-generational trauma transmission. Mrs. Farmer was raised in an environment where love was conditional on performance, where mistakes were met with humiliation, and where emotional needs were dismissed as weakness. She has internalized these patterns so deeply that she cannot distinguish between healthy parenting and abuse. Her current pregnancy represents a high risk for repeating these patterns with a new child. Despite therapy, Mrs. Farmer has not demonstrated genuine behavioral change, only the ability to articulate socially acceptable responses when directly prompted. Her social media activity reveals her authentic beliefs, which remain focused on control, perfection, and punishment. Recommendation: continued supervised visitation only. Weekly intensive therapy focused specifically on breaking abuse cycles. No unsupervised contact with children, including the new baby after birth, until she can demonstrate sustained behavioral change over a minimum of 12 months. The report landed like a bomb. Atwood tried to discredit it, called West biased, suggested he was working with Craig to destroy Chelsea. But Wells wasn't buying it. Drive West has no relationship with Dr. Farmer, the judge said coldly. His evaluation is thorough, evidence-based, and consistent with what this court has observed. Mrs. Farmer, you will continue supervised visitation. Additionally, once your child is born, the same restrictions will apply. You will not have unsupervised contact until you complete the therapeutic requirements Drive West has outlined. Chelsea stood, her voice breaking. You can't do this. You can't take away my baby before they're even born. I'm not taking your baby away, Mrs. Farmer. I'm ensuring your baby is safe. If you want to be a mother to your children, you will do the work required to become a safe parent. If you refuse, then yes, custody arrangements will be made that prioritize the children's welfare over your desires. The courtroom was silent except for Chelsea's sobs. Craig felt Tom's hand on his shoulder again. Felt Cooper's satisfaction. Felt the weight of another victory. But he also felt something else. A nagging question. How far was too far? He pushed it aside. Jeremy was safe. The new baby would be safe. That was what mattered, wasn't it? The Mackey family's complete destruction came 3 months later. Trudy was convicted of tax fraud and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. The foundation's assets were liquidated to pay back taxes and penalties. Dennis served his 6 months for DUI, and when he got out, he was arrested again, this time for assault after getting drunk and attacking a photographer who'd been following him. Stacy disappeared into witness protection after testifying against the money laundering operation. Last Craig heard, she was working at a grocery store in Montana under a new name. And Chelsea gave birth to a daughter in late spring. The hospital called Craig, as he was listed as an emergency contact. He arrived to find Chelsea alone in the delivery room. No family, no friends, just a tired nurse who looked at him with pity. She's been asking for you, the nurse said. Craig found Chelsea holding her newborn daughter, tears streaming down her face. I named her Emma, she said softly. Is that okay? It's your daughter. You can name her whatever you want. I wanted you to meet her. I wanted Jeremy to meet her. Craig looked at the baby. She was tiny, perfect, completely unaware of the chaos she'd been born into. Chelsea, you know the court order. I can't bring Jeremy here without approval, and you can't have unsupervised contact with Emma either. I know. But Craig. Chelsea looked up at him, and for the first time in years, he saw genuine vulnerability. Not manipulation. Not performance. Just broken honesty. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be what they need me to be. Craig sat down. He shouldn't have. He should have left. But something in her voice stopped him. The therapy drive West recommended. Are you doing it? Yes. Every week. It's hard. She makes me talk about my childhood, about my mother, about all the things I thought were normal. And I'm starting to see. She trailed off. I'm starting to see what I did to Jeremy. Really see it. And it's destroying me. Good. Chelsea flinched. I don't mean that cruelly, Craig said. But Chelsea, the person you were, the person who could put our son in the snow and laugh about it, that person needs to be destroyed. You can't become better without first recognizing how bad you were. I hate myself. That's a start. But hate isn't enough. You need to build something new. Actually change, not just perform change. I don't know if I can. Then Emma goes into foster care the moment you take her home. Because I won't let you do to her what you did to Jeremy. Chelsea was quiet for a long time, just holding her daughter. Then, you won. You destroyed my family, took my son, ruined my life. Isn't that enough? Craig thought about it. Really thought about it. Was it enough? He'd set out to protect Jeremy and expose the Mackey family. He'd done both. Trudy was in prison. Dennis was facing more charges. Stacy was gone. Chelsea had lost everything. But had it been about justice? Or had it become about revenge somewhere along the way? I didn't destroy your family, Craig said finally. Your family destroyed itself. I just made sure everyone could see it. And no, it's not enough. Because this isn't about punishment, Chelsea. It's about making sure no more kids suffer what Jeremy suffered. So what happens now? Now you do the work. Real work. Not for me, not for the court, but because Emma deserves a mother who won't hurt her. And if you can't be that mother, then you step aside and let someone else raise her who can. He stood to leave. Craig. He turned. I'm sorry, Chelsea whispered. I'm so sorry. Craig looked at his ex-wife, broken and alone with a newborn she might never raise. He felt no satisfaction in her suffering. No triumph. Just exhaustion. I believe you, he said. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Only time and change can do that. He left her crying in the hospital room. 18 months later, Craig sat in his backyard watching Jeremy play with his new dog, a golden retriever named Max. The boy was laughing, running, completely carefree in a way Craig hadn't seen in years. Tom visited every month. Scott Levine had become Jeremy's pediatrician. Dr. Amanda Keith was slowly helping Jeremy process his trauma. And Chelsea had actually done the work. It took a year, but she'd completed Drive West's program. She'd severed all contact with what remained of her family. She'd gotten a job, her first real job ever, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She'd moved into a small apartment. She'd been seeing Emma for supervised visits that had slowly expanded to unsupervised afternoons. Last month, she'd asked if Jeremy would visit. Craig had let him choose. Jeremy had said yes, tentatively, with the understanding he could leave anytime. The visit had gone well. Not perfect, but well. Chelsea had been humble, patient, careful. She'd apologized to Jeremy, really apologized, taking full accountability. She'd let him be angry. She'd answered his questions honestly. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But it was the beginning of something that might eventually heal. Craig's phone buzzed. A text from Paul Cooper. Trudy's parole hearing denied. She'll serve the full sentence. Craig deleted the message without responding. The Mackey Foundation was gone. The family name was ruined. Trudy would be an old woman by the time she got out of prison. Dennis was on his third stint in rehab. Stacy was still in hiding. Craig had won. But sitting in his backyard, watching his son finally be a kid, Craig realized something. Victory wasn't about destroying his enemies. It was about this. Jeremy's laughter. His healing. His safety. Everything else. The court battles. The media exposure. The systematic destruction of the Mackey family. That had been necessary. But it wasn't the goal. The goal was this moment. His son, happy and free. Dad, Jeremy called out. Max did a trick. Come see. Craig stood and walked over, leaving behind the past and all its ugliness. He'd spent 18 months being methodical, strategic, ruthless in protecting his son. Now it was time to just be a father. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory. 2 years after that New Year's Eve, Craig received an unexpected letter. It was from Chelsea. Dear Craig, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know the damage I caused might never fully heal. But I wanted you to know that I've been awarded unsupervised visitation with Emma. Drive West says I've made genuine progress. The court agrees. I'm not writing to ask for the same with Jeremy. He gets to decide if and when he's ready for more contact with me, and I respect that. I'm writing because I want to say something I should have said 2 years ago. Thank you. Thank you for not letting me get away with it. Thank you for documenting everything when it would have been easier to look away. Thank you for protecting our son, even when it meant destroying our marriage and my family and everything I thought I understood about the world. I was raised to believe love meant high standards and consequences. That pushing people to be perfect was a gift. It took losing everything to understand that what I was taught was love was actually abuse. I'll never forgive my mother for what she did to me, but I'm learning to forgive myself for what I did to Jeremy. That's the work, not excusing it, not forgetting it, but understanding it so I never repeat it. Emma is thriving. She's funny and stubborn and nothing like the perfect, obedient child I thought I wanted. She's messy and loud and completely herself. And I love her for it. I love her the way I should have loved Jeremy. Unconditionally, without requirements, without needing her to be anything except exactly who she is. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect Jeremy to either. But I wanted you to know that what you did, exposing me, forcing me to face myself, it saved Emma. It probably saved me too. So thank you. Chelsea. Craig read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with all the other documents from those dark months. The court records, the custody orders, the medical reports. He didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing to say. But that night, he showed it to Jeremy, who was now 10 and developing the kind of emotional intelligence that came from surviving trauma and working through it. What do you think? Craig asked. Jeremy read it carefully. Then he said, I think she's trying. I don't know if that's enough, but I think she's trying. Do you want to see her more? Maybe. Not yet. But maybe someday. Jeremy looked up at his father. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's your choice. It'll always be your choice. Jeremy nodded. Then, quieter, Dad? I'm glad you came home early that night. Craig felt his throat tighten. Me too, buddy. If you hadn't, I don't know if I would have made it. You would have. You're stronger than you think. But I didn't have to find out because you were there. Jeremy leaned against him. You saved me. Craig wrapped his arm around his son. We saved each other. And sitting there in the quiet of their home, Craig realized that revenge, real revenge, wasn't about destroying your enemies. It was about building something better from the ashes of what they'd tried to burn down. The Mackey family had tried to break Jeremy, to mold him into their image of perfection through cruelty and control. But Jeremy was still here, still whole, still healing. That was the ultimate victory. Not Trudy in prison, not the foundation dissolved, not Chelsea's public humiliation. Just this, a father and son, safe together, building a future the Mackey family could never touch. Craig had come home early from his shift 2 years ago and found his son in the snow. He'd walked inside, crashed their celebration, and said 5 words that changed everything. But the real 5 words, the ones that actually mattered, were the ones he said every day now. You're safe. I've got you. And that, Craig thought, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.